We are going to begin the service from Mrs. Joyce Gartzman. On behalf of the family, I want to thank all those joining us today on the live stream. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Rachel Kaplan-Marks of Temple Beth Ezra.
L'chol zman ve'et, l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim. There is a time for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. Friends, we gather today to honor the life of the matriarch of your family, Joyce Gartzman. And though being here today comes as no surprise, it is painful all the same because of how much she loved you and how much you love her. And so for Joyce's life that united you, for her love which death cannot sever, for her companionship that you shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought you joy and happiness, we give thanks to God. For all these and more, we are grateful. In his anguish, Job cried out, Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mivorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. So at this time, I'm going to invite the Mourners, Joyce's 4 children, to rise. I don't know if it's possible to turn the microphone up, but if it is, that would be helpful. So at this time, we turn to our tradition. We look for words that might offer us some measure of comfort. In the book of Proverbs, we find a passage that is traditionally sung at the Shabbos dinner table. It's a passage that recognizes the gift of a truly good wife and mother. Eshet chayil mi imsa, v'rachok mipninim michra. A woman of valor, a good wife, a good mother who can find. Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her family trusts in her, and for nothing shall they lack. She renders them good and not evil all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity, and cheerfully she faces whatever may come. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children come forward to bless her. Her husband, too, he praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, Her deeds speak her praise. For more generations than we can count, our people have read words from Psalm 23 as we lay our loved ones to their final rest. The poetic words offer us a beautiful frame, a frame through which to reflect on life and death and what abides eternally. I'll recite the psalm first in Hebrew, and then we can recite it together from our booklets in English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Binot desha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot inahaleni. Nafshi yishovev. Yancheni b'maglei tzedek lema'an shemo. Gam ki elech begates al mavet. Lo ira ra, ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umin shantecha, hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Dishanta vashemen roshi, kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yamei chayai, v'shavti beveit Adonai, la'orech yamim. Let's read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Kohelet, otherwise known as Ecclesiastes, teaches that there is a time to keep silent and there is a time to speak. To share words and memories from the heart, we'll invite the following members of Joyce's beloved family: her son, Howard Gartzman, daughter-in-law, Joyce Bartz, granddaughter, Penny Senra, grandson, Mark Gartzman, grandson, Ben Judkins, niece, Debbie Goldman, and finally her son, Marty Gartzman.
I'm privileged to be speaking on behalf of my brothers and sisters. This eulogy is a collaboration. I brought this whistle with me today that my mother's held on to over 50 years. After school each day, my brother, my sisters, we'd go out and play in the neighborhood. And when she blew the whistle, we knew Mom is calling, and it's time to come home for dinner. And well, I kind of think of it as an early form of texting. First, we'd like to say thank you to Phoebe and Mercedes for treating my mother with such dignity and grace and helping her through these last 8 months. My mother at times could be a little stubborn or proud, and I marveled at the way the two of you would allow her minor irritations to bounce off of you as if nothing was said. Janice, we want to thank you for guiding us through the process of caring for Mom as her health declined. There are so many things you did to comfort her and aid her that allowed Mom to pass with dignity and with the comfort she deserved after a lifetime of putting others before herself. Finally, I want to say thank you to all my cousins, my mother's nieces and nephews, as well as her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Every time I went to her house, the phone would ring at least once, and it would be one of you calling to say hi and chat with her for a while. Of course, that was usually right after she told me her phone never rang. Believe me, there are countless times she told all of us how lucky she was to have all of you as family. Our mother, being as sharp as she was, remembered everything you told her. She was my own personal Facebook. Whenever I would visit, she'd bring me up to date on what all of you were doing. Mom was the single greatest influence in my life for a variety of reasons. I'm not saying I'm able to duplicate all of her wonderful qualities, but she has influenced me and my siblings in so many ways, as well as those around her. Number one on my list is her love of sports and competition. Probably her main sports were bowling, golf, and some tennis, but I also remember times she had about 20 8 to 16-year-olds jogging up and down Grand Street. She loved playing bridge, and really the last time she played was only a few weeks ago. She also loved playing mahjong, canasta, or really any game. She was competitive and definitely wanted to win, but for her, it was about being with friends and getting a chance to socialize. She even started to play bingo, which she had never liked before, and I think she did it just to have the chance to be with and meet new people. In other words, her motto was, be competitive, but enjoy the moment. For instance, what she taught me about golf was that the most important thing was to have the chance to be outside and enjoy the beautiful surroundings. This fact, of course, is reflected in my score. Our mother was very organized. She kept ledgers of every transaction her brokers ever made, whether it was bonds getting called, buying or selling stocks, cashing in annuities. She was smart as a whip, always remembering everything that was done or needed to be done. Maybe that was why she was so adept at running the children's department at Jules 5 and 10. Or was it her love for shopping? I don't know. I do know that while she was working there, the children's department was the #1 department at the store. Another way she was organized was with her calendar. Each time I visited her, I would check her calendar at everyone's birthday and anniversary, and of course she made sure to contact everyone at the appropriate time. Every year, she also made a list of her favorite charities to guarantee that she didn't miss donating to any. She was a notorious list maker. Any scrap of paper would do. When I cleaned out her desk this week, there were no less than 15 pads of paper for lists. She made to-do lists. She made menus for her famous brunches and dinner parties, lists of calls. She would plan out errands in an efficient order and write it in a list. I thought I was the only one that now makes lists for everything, but after talking to my brother and sisters, list making seems to be an inherited family trait. Even when making us lunches, this type of organization could be seen. On school mornings, you could find her in the kitchen with 12 pieces of bread laid out in 2 rows of 6, constructing sandwiches, and she'd be constructing sandwiches that were similar, but made to order to each family member's preference. This one likes mustard, this one likes ketchup, this one mayo, but not with the corned beef. Butter and jelly, cream cheese and jelly, peanut butter and jelly. These lunches never cease to make other kids jealous because they usually contain snacks such as chips, Little Debbie's, a snack pack pudding, or candy. At this point, I have to mention the cabinet in the kitchen that Mom always kept filled with cookies that were either store-bought or homemade. She had a Big J's can of chips, licorice, chocolate, and whatever she saw at the grocery store. Her cooking cabinet was always the first stop for anyone coming to her house. If she had written a list of how to be a good mother and a good person, here's what she would have said. Okay, I'll go on. Your mother, okay, here's what she would have said. Your telephone is your lifeline. Use it often, especially to call your mother. Keep in touch with friends and family. If something needs to be done, just do it. Family dinner is a must. Forgive and forget and hold no grudges. Do unto others. 'Tis better to give than receive. Reach out and touch someone. Stay informed. Learn new things. Read. Listen. Vote. Think of others before yourself. Make new friends, but keep the old. Listen, but don't gossip. Question, but don't criticize. And finally, food is the way to everyone's heart. especially chocolate. Mom didn't mind being the organizer. She was president of the PTA at Cleveland School and president of the sisterhood at our temple. I learned something new this week that I think my friends from Highland Elementary School will find interesting or surprising. When we moved to the house on Grant Street and my mother was no longer a PTA president, she suggested to the PTA at Highland School that they could raise money by recycling newspapers. Her idea generated little enthusiasm from the PTA, so she went ahead on her own, and in 1967, she started a paper drive at the school. It was the first recycling program in the district. To increase participation, she made it into a contest between classrooms. So every Thursday, the kids at Highland would bring their tied bundles of newspaper to school and line up stacks in front of their room numbers, just like the sandwiches on the kitchen counter. Only these bundles were about 6 feet tall and stretched across the schoolyard. Our mother was there every week to oversee the event and make sure things were running smoothly. The event was very successful, raised a lot of money, and set a precedent for the other schools in the district to follow. Another thing that amazed us about Mom was her grit and determination. One of the times she fell, and okay, there were many and not enough time to name them all, but one of those times she broke her hip, and really it seemed as though she might never be able to walk again, but the way she went about her rehab was truly inspirational, every day working above and beyond what was expected. It taught me what it meant to be focused and determined to reach a goal. This in itself was miraculous, and it seemed everything was getting back to normal, but then, only several months after completing a rehab, right in front of many of us, the night before a Goldman family bowling party, she decided she would take another spill. It was a sort of slow motion fall backward to the ground, landing on her pillow of a butt. It didn't seem like much of a fall, and we weren't alarmed, but it turns out she broke her pelvis in several places and fractured a lumbar. Being so close to her last incident in recent recovery, this truly seemed like something too overwhelming to overcome. However, she got right back on the horse and completed another rehabilitation program. These last 9 months, our mother has lived with a dislocated shoulder, and yes, it was another fall. She essentially became a lefty and only really complained when she wrote a check or there was an especially achy day. She did have an amazing tolerance for pain. One thing she did for exercise used to scare the heck out of us. When she was in her 80s, while living in the Optima, after donning her bathing suit and bathrobe, by herself, she'd walk down 3 floors of an isolated cement stairwell and through the indoor parking lot to do laps or to take a class in the pool. She was always determined to stay in shape and keep moving. When Marty and I joined Weight Watchers in later days, the leaders always remembered her and made a point at the meetings to call out Mom as the longest serving lifetime member in the entire Chicago region. I still miss those Weight Watchers pizza we grew up on that included white bread, mozzarella cheese, ketchup, oregano, and mushrooms. Only 2 points. The thing that I hope sticks with me for the rest of my life is how our mother always wanted to move forward, learning new things. Mom was an avid reader of books. She joined many book and movie clubs, always read the paper, got angry at the news, and loved going to lectures discussing world situations. In fact, when our mom was no longer able to drive to the library, she lobbied with Skokie and the Optima to have the library come to her. The bookmobile came once a week, and it was always swamped with people. The librarians all knew my mom by name and never failed to have her books ready for her. It was truly a pleasure to walk down with her to get her books. Another example of her wanting to continually grow was that after 30 years of playing bridge, she decided to take some advanced bridge classes to get even better. And as recently as last week, our mother made Janice look through all the events at Mather to see what she would want to attend. I do have to mention technology. As much as she hated it, she learned to use a MacBook, an iPad, her phone, email, texting, spreadsheets, Instagram, and Facebook. What was her motivation? To be in touch with her family and friends. We have fond memories of Mom turning on the speaker on her phone, or trying to make a call, or looking at half her face in a Zoom or FaceTime, but somehow she made it all work. Our mother has always been good at making and keeping friends. She has certain friends that date back as far as grammar school, including Shirley, Lois, and Marcia. There were golf friends, her bridge and mahjong friends, charity groups, and the group of friends she would travel with. Amazingly, through time, she kept in touch with all of them, even college friends. Even when she moved to the Optima building, she found a wonderful group of new friends that soon came to feel like old friends. She had lost so many longtime friends by this time that she was happy that her new goal of meeting younger, fun, and interesting people was fulfilled. Even in Mather, where she was essentially isolated for months because of COVID, Mom has met some fantastic people. Finally, family. She had a great relationship with our dad. They were partners in work and play, travel, and of course, family. Their relationship provided a good example of a successful marriage that we all aspire to. One of her great traits, her empathy, was revealed when she would relate to her family. First, she and our father bred children who started their careers as 2 teachers, a nurse, and a legal aid lawyer. My mother made it a point to try to relate to each of her kids, our spouses, her nieces and nephews, the grandkids, the great-grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren in a way that reflected each person's personality. She never missed a birthday, and she made it clear she wanted the opportunity to spend time with everyone on an individual basis. In fact, she would also take every opportunity to get the family together, whether it be birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, special achievements, soccer games, Cub Scout events, violent concerts, or maybe she and Dad would lure us over with bagels, lox, and cream cheese. This might have been a slight bone of contention with the in-laws, but she never stopped planning the next event. She also organized spa days for all the girls, including lunch and massages. Additionally, she and Dad took pleasure in taking various family vacations with different members of the family. Whatever else she did in life, family came first. In her latter days, she found immense joy spending time with me and Mackie, or FaceTiming with Alexandra, Ozzie, Mabel, and Caitlyn. One more note. As many of you know, our mother really liked watching Jeopardy every day. We all knew not to call between 3:30 and 4, and if you were visiting, there was no talking at that time, unless it was a commercial or you were guessing the answer. Is it any coincidence that she passed at 3:33 in the afternoon, about the time they'd be bringing up the first answer on the board? Answer, Joyce Gartzman. Question, who was a great mother? Mom, you showed a great balance in life between work, play, and family. You showed us how to age gracefully. We love you, Mom, and we hope you're now with Dad, starting on a new journey together.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joyce Bartz, Joyce's daughter-in-law, married to Arthur Gartzman. Yes, my mother-in-law and I were both named Joyce. Plus, our birthdays are almost the same day. Joyce Sr. and Joyce Jr. was the way we were at times introduced. I used to say, Marty looked far and wide to find another woman named Joyce to marry. Joyce taught me in the past 40 years about the richness of life in many ways. In fact, when I first met the Gartzmans, I thought they were rich. They even owned a dime store. And I had never heard of someone having a cleaning lady before. Joyce took care of me as I entered the family, or tried. Why, she even went with me to buy my wedding dress. My mom died when I was 28, and Joyce Sr. took over being my mother 39 years ago. She introduced me to many things during those years, and clearly one was the Jewish religion and culture. Yes, some of us in the family made some decisions about the practice of Judaism that were not her choices, but she accepted those differences as time went on. Yes, she lamented that Modesto, Jack, and I weren't Jewish, but she was thrilled that Howie married Sue for many reasons. She introduced me to the holidays. Jewish holidays were so important, as was the richness of family included in these. The rituals, the tradition, the food, the camaraderie, the memories of her world, and what she was wanting to impart on her children and later her grandchildren. She introduced me to differences in cooking. Carrot mold, kishki, chopped liver, gefilte fish, mandel bread, matzo ball soup, brisket, all with her own special take. And lest I forget, chocolate cake and chocolate frosting and green and gold rice. I never knew a deli tray and nuts and candy were must-haves at every event. Actually, we celebrated Marty's birthday just a week ago, and she needed nuts and candy on the table. And of course, as Howie said, she followed it all up with a Weight Watchers meeting. Her activities: she was politically interested in news and was a good Democrat. She was up to date on what was happening politically and certainly had some strong opinions about the last president. And she was a doer. She went through a period of incessant knitting. She knitted us all sweaters and Afghans, more than we could ever use. And she had various activities: golf, bridge, bowling, travel trips, all with more friends and family. Why, only a few months ago, playing Rummy Cube with her, she repeatedly beat Marty, Sandy, and I. And there was Jules' 5 to $1, and of course, Art. Art and Joyce's life centered on family, but Jules was a close second. She joined Art in this work, partly to be with him and support him, working in the children's department at Jules, helping carry out his social world, doting on him, cooking his favorite food, and making his world special and complete with him every step of the way. Joyce emphasized keeping your relationship with your spouse alive. Who else would give Marty and I a present of a trip to the Sybaris? Joyce was rich in her relationships with others and cared very strongly about people. In fact, many considered her a second mom to them. Joyce was always generous to her kids and to us in-law kids, always quick to help us out financially or provide support, both emotionally or physically. Joyce introduced to me, as I became part of the family, the concept of family, the importance of family and friends, and how she was surrounded by those. Each child, Marty, Janice, Sandy, Howie, Jack, Modesto, Sue, and grandchildren, Yasaky, Penny, Dan, Rob, Mark, John, Ben, Sam, and Isaac, and of course later, Debra, Sarah, Steve, Joey, and soon Katie. She dealt with all in terms of who they were. All are special, and that each is unique in their needs. When my children came along, Joyce was there for Rob's first bath, for the first shoes, for the first layette, furniture for the nursery, gifts, gifts, gifts. When my kids were sick, she was right there taking care of them when I had to work, chauffeuring them around in the Nasher. And of course, there were all the Jules shopping trips for back to school and holiday shopping. Joyce introduced me to relatives, names I could never remember, so many, everyone was related somehow. And over time, as she introduced me, she called me her daughter. In later years, Joyce wanted to continue many of the specialness of our relationships together. This included spas with her, Janice, and Sue, trips, and took us out for dinner and shopping dates individually so that we could have special time with her and she with us. Joyce looked at the bright side of things. She turned lemons to lemonade, included with that lots of laughter and a great sense of humor. When times of difficulty befell us, she would always say, "We will work it out. Not you, but we." Joyce was rich with friends. Shirley, Evelyn, Phyllis, Marcia, Fran, Esther, Jean, Doris, Evelyn, Renee, Muriel, so many friends. She was rich with relatives, the specialness of her siblings, the many nieces and nephews, the endless cousins, the attachment to what family and what family history has meant to her was the center of her life. And they in turn reciprocated, her many nieces and nephews having that special bond with her as well, calling frequently as her health declined, and viewing her as a very special mom to them. Joyce wanted to celebrate every occasion with us: birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, kids' events, sports, graduations, and all other milestones. She celebrated each child and grandchild's successes and was thrilled about the arrival of each great-grandchild: Caitlyn, Mia, Mackie, Mabel, Ozzie, and of course Alexandra. Her message was, you never stop being a mom. You never stop worrying about the children. Each child and each grandchild is special and unique, and you can't spoil their kids too much. She was my role model in becoming a loving and committed spouse, celebrating and appreciating each of my children's uniquenesses and successes, and reveling in every moment I now have with my grandchildren. Yes, what Joyce appreciated and taught me about was the richness of life. She embraced that her family and her friends, her Jewish identity, and the many wonders that life can offer. That was her message. So, I guess I am now Joyce Sr. I hope one day to be as rich as her.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Penny. I'm Grandma's first grandchild, and I'm going to try to get through this. What can I say about Grandma that would accurately describe her? That is a question I've been running through my head for the past few days. My siblings, cousins, and I take after my mom. My siblings, cousins, and I were so lucky to have had such an amazing grandmother and role model in our lives. She was always engaged, fun, full of energy, busy, strong, smart, and witty. I think one of the most amazing things about Grandma was that she made each one of her grandchildren feel special. Everyone talks about how being the first grandchild and girl, that Grandma and I had a special bond. We did, I won't deny that. From numerous, and I mean numerous shopping sprees, to working at the store, sleepovers, playing games, learning how to knit and crochet, and sitting next to her at every family dinner, I was extremely close with her. But to my grandmother's credit, I feel like she created those memories with each one of her grandchildren. She found different things for each of us. Some may have been the same, but when she was with you, you were the center of her world, and she would do anything for you, even let you eat ice cream for dinner. For almost 42 years, I have been blessed to have her be such an active part of my life. Until these past 2 years, I hadn't gone a month or two without seeing her. When Steve and I moved to Florida, that was still the plan until COVID. These past 2 years have been rough for everyone, and I know they were especially rough for Grandma. Being away, it was extremely important to me that Grandma was able to meet our daughter, Alexandra. I will be forever grateful that we were able to come in last June and she was able to meet her in person and hold her. It is amazing what FaceTime can do, and how impressed is everyone with her FaceTime and Zoom abilities at 92 and 93, even if we could only see her forehead at times. Because while Alex will never remember her Gigi, whenever we talked to her, she knew exactly who she was. Grandma was so loved by all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. When Dan told me what Mia said about Gigi, I knew I had to include it because I think she said it best. Gigi Grandma lived an amazing life, but she was really tired. Mia was right. Grandma lived an amazing almost 94 years surrounded by family and friends, and as much as I already miss her, she was tired, and I am happy that she is at peace. Grandma, you were the best grandma and Gigi that anyone can ever ask for. I can't even see. We are also lucky to have had you for so many years, and we will make sure that your memory stays alive forever. I love you.
Good morning, everybody. As you all know, I'm Mark, Marty's middle son, Joyce's favorite grandchild. Well, besides Penny. And John, Ben, Isaac, Sam, but definitely up there. Grandma was truly the most loving person I've ever met. She had such a massive heart and loved all of her grandchildren so much and made such an effort to make each and every one of us feel so special. At every sporting event, concert, school play, or any event any of us had, there was Grandma with her hair, makeup, jewelry, all perfect, cheering us on. She was the glue that held the whole family together, the true definition of a matriarch. Strong, powerful, classy, loving, hardworking. What an amazing role model for all of us to learn and grow up with. She clearly passed those traits down to her amazing daughters and granddaughter, well, really all of us. I was so blessed to grow up close to her. The second you would pull up to the house on Grant, Grandma, with her apron still on, would come out waving and greeting you, just so excited to see you. She was always happy and excited to see her grandchildren, no matter what was going on. And what an infectious smile she had. You walk into the house and are immediately bombarded with offers of food, well, because clearly I'm too skinny and don't eat enough. Either bagels and lox, cookies from one of the many cookie jars that my dad was already elbow deep in, or candy from the candy bowl. By then, Grandpa would wake up from his nap on the couch while watching another enthralling round of golf. Then after some rounds of playing memory or cards or marble runs downstairs, it was time to run upstairs. Past all the memories of the past, up the stairwell, to the memories of all of us coating each and every inch of the walls upstairs. They were so proud of their family. You could run into one of the many different color-themed rooms, either watching Nickelodeon while laying on the seat at the end of their bed, or playing Nintendo at the room at the end of the hall, or games in the first room on the left. Or it was one of the many shopping trips she would take all of her grandchildren on that would always end in going to one of two places for lunch, the Bagel or California Pizza Kitchen. Or maybe it was a work day. The day started out at breakfast at the Cozy Corner, then off to work, where I would kill thousands of fish trying to get them from the plastic container into the plastic bag, and until they would demote me back to bagger. I liked it there better anyways. I could watch Grandma, with her ever-powerful presence, demand the room and continually tell customers she didn't speak Spanish, and feed me plenty of chocolate and candy. She really was the glue that held us all together, the backbone of the family, the Gartzmans and the Goldmans, the gefilte to our fish. She will be missed so incredibly much. While watching the sunrise over the lake this morning, I saw the clouds part to let the sun come up to a blue sky. What a great metaphor for what she did to each and every one of us. Then I knew that we are still in good hands because she's looking down on us and going to continue to protect us all and make sure we nosh plenty.
I'm Ben, for those of you who don't know me, son of Sandy and grandson of Joyce. Grandma truly was the best grandma in the world. I think everyone would agree. As we all know, she had endless generosity and kindness. Her mind and memory were sharp as a tack. She was full of wit and good humor. And what a family she helped create and loved so incredibly much. And I think each and every one of us felt that love very affectionately and also very personally. To me, it felt like the very definition of perfect grandma love. When I was 19, I came and stayed with Grandma shortly after Grandpa passed. This is the first time I remember staying with her alone. We talked a lot about Grandpa. She shared many stories with me, and she also wanted to hear about my recent travels. We sat together for days as I filled her in on every last detail and photo of my adventures. We used her old atlas as a way to mark the journey and transition from one story to the next. She was so easy to talk to, so genuinely curious and inquisitive, and such a good listener. Okay, maybe I put her to sleep a few times. I can still see Grandma dancing at family weddings. She'd mirror your move, looking at you with the biggest smile on her face, getting down on the late night dance floor. And this being when she was in her earlier, maybe mid-80s. By her late 80s, Grandma was still beating me in rummy. We often played cards over bagels and lox when I came to visit. And, without a doubt, she always told me to take the spoon out of my morning coffee. So I listened, and accordingly, she told me to take the spoon out of my morning coffee while we played so I didn't poke my eye out. And so I listened, and accordingly, I never lost an eye. A few years ago, we went to a museum in downtown Chicago, just the two of us. I, wanting to be the chill grandson from California, let her walk through the exhibits all afternoon without her walker, occasionally using my arm as support. What a day. We strolled through that museum like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, not a care in the world but the paintings we pondered. While she may have known my naivety would grant her liberation from the walker, and while I left my parents and all my aunts and uncles terrified, at least she didn't fall. And looking back, I'm happy that she felt the freedom she did during our little day out in the big city, just Grandma and grandson. Maybe most of all, I know how much my mom loved her, and all her kids and all their spouses, and all her nieces and all her nephews, and all her grandkids, all her great-grandkids, all her great-nieces and great-nephews, and all her dear friends, and how much she loved all of us back. So, while we all miss her already, Grandma is and always will be the best grandma in the world, and I know she'll live on in the sweetest spot of our hearts forever.
And I am Debbie, the daughter of Hal, Joyce's older brother, and the granddaughter of my dear Aunt Joyce. I could make this very short and just say ditto. Coming as the last or near last speaker, you'll see the consistency in everything we've heard today about Joyce. Most eulogies include several anecdotes that capture the spirit of the person we have come together to celebrate and remember. But as I sat down to write this eulogy, my mind did not wander to any specific anecdotes about my beloved Aunt Joyce. Rather, my mind was filled with the powerful experience of what it was like to be with her, whether in my childhood, adolescence, or adulthood. Simply put, I felt loved. I felt appreciated. I felt unconditional acceptance. I felt she was truly interested in me. I felt like, have you heard it before? I was her favorite niece. Even though there were no favorites among her nieces and nephews, just as there were no favorites among her grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great and grandnieces and nephews. I suspect, and in fact I heard from my cousins and my siblings, as well as the next generation, that we all felt the same as I did. When you were with Aunt Joyce, you felt special. You felt loved, appreciated, and her genuine joy in being with you. Aunt Joyce was a people person. You've heard that today. She was a Goldman girl through and through. From her mother, Sarah, she learned to take pleasure in life's adventures, in her friendships, in her family, and in her wonderful marriage. She had such a positive spirit and boundless energy. When you asked her how she was, even towards the end of life, when she had that dislocated shoulder, she would say, "Wonderful." And then she would ask you how you were doing, how your children and grandchildren and siblings and their children and your cousins were doing. And she really wanted to know. Yes, Aunt Joyce, like her mother and other Goldman women, who I will not mention, was a good talker. But equally important, she was a good listener. As my dear family knows, I am not a phone talker. Yet I could talk for over an hour on the phone with Aunt Joyce. She was always so animated. She would laugh from deep in her belly, often at herself. She wanted to know how everyone was doing. It was during these conversations I learned how smart she was, what books she read, how much she thought about politics, how much she cared about a government that took care of those who needed support. And as you heard, Aunt Joyce watched Jeopardy on TV, not soap operas. That tells you what entertained her. She never forgot a birthday or an anniversary. All of us cousins remember the cards and the phone calls, even to those who married into the mishpacha. She always wrote a sentence or two that captured a special moment that you had shared with her. I think all of us cousins considered Aunt Joyce a second mother. Don wrote me a short note. Ken reiterated it, recalling that when Don's parents moved to Phoenix while he was still at the University of Illinois, Joyce and Art's home became his home base. I think each of us has a story to tell of turning to Aunt Joyce when we needed her special gifts of love, care, unconditional appreciation. Above all, as you've heard today, Aunt Joyce loved her family, her children, Marty, Howie, Janice, Sandy, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, her daughters and sons-in-law, and her grandchildren-in-law as well. When Sandy and Jack moved to California, she made special efforts to build relationships with John and Ben that were as strong as those that she shared with Rob, Mark, Sam, Penny, Daniel, Yasaky, and Isaac, who lived nearby. Similarly, she showered love on her great-grandchildren here in Skokie, as well as those in Colorado and New York and Florida. how lucky you all were, and we all were, to have her for so many years. In recent years, Aunt Joyce relished her role as matriarch of the Goldman family. At extended family gatherings, particularly our Passover Seders and the bowling parties, she sat and took it all in. I imagine she was thinking about her parents, Phil and Sarah, and after their deaths, her brothers, Hal and Jerry, and how much pleasure they all shared in fostering the closeness that transcended geography and generations among our large, boisterous Goldman family. Aunt Joyce's death marks the passing of her generation, the first generation of Goldmans born in the United States, maturing in the Jewish cocoon of the south side of Chicago, raising their own families in the suburbs, and then maintaining ties even as we spread across the country. How fortunate we have been to be part of this loving, supportive family. Our close relationships are a product of the love that Aunt Joyce, my father Hal, Uncle Jerry, Grandpa Phil, and Grandma Sarah poured into nurturing those ties that bind. Aunt Joyce, you have given us so much. We miss you and love you in equal measure, and we hold the best of you inside of us.
Just a few additions and some thanks beyond what has already been expressed. First, I want to thank Howard, Joyce, Penny, Mark, Ben, and Debbie for their beautiful remembrances of Mom. It was wonderful. Want to thank those, in addition to those who are here, many of whom came from afar, those who have joined online for this service. I'm sure that Mom never imagined a service where many of the people who loved her and loved us would be joining virtually, but we want to thank you for being here with us and honoring her. We want to thank many relatives and friends who support her, particularly in the last year, which have been isolating and difficult for many people of her age, but especially for people who are social like my mother. I want to give a special thanks to our friends, the friends of her sons and daughters, and their children. Mom was always, we've gotten many notes that have said how welcoming Mom was when we were growing up, how she welcomed them into their home, was always interested in them, and they have repaid her in the past year in many different ways, reaching out, contacting her, visiting, inviting her to play bridge, mahjong, canasta, whatever it might be. Thank you for doing that. Want to thank, in the past couple of weeks, the people from Journey Care Hospice, who have been wonderful. Want to thank the people here at Chicago Jewish Funerals and Yehuda, our funeral director, for being compassionate and warm. And at the close of the service, after Rabbi Marks and Yehuda are complete, for those who did not see the slideshow that Sandy put together where she narrowed down to her favorite 175 photos, anyhow, we'll stream that again for those who would like to stay and watch it. Thank you all.
Our rabbis taught that there are 3 crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasized that the crown of a good name excels them all. Tov Shem Mishemen Tov, a good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth, health, and even life passes away, but a good name lives forever. Joyce Gartzman, Masha Yenta Bat Yitzchak Feivel V'Sarah, lived her life in such a way that she possessed a Shem Tov, a good name. You have heard so much about Joyce's incredible character. I'll humbly add that after meeting her just a few times, I adored her. I am the luckiest, she told me. Joyce counted her many blessings regularly. Born on February 8, 1928 in Chicago to Philip and Sarah Goldman, Joyce had 2 brothers, Harold and Jerry. Growing up in Hyde Park, Joyce attended Kosminski Elementary School and Hyde Park High School. At Kosminski, she was part of a group of friends who called themselves the Kos Cuties. They remained friends for life, and as you've heard, Joyce made many good friends through all the stages of her life. After graduating high school, she attended Indiana University before transferring to Roosevelt University and graduating among its earliest graduation classes. It was at Roosevelt that she met Art Gartzman, and as the story goes, he was copying off one of her test papers. Joyce loved Art, and he loved her. The 2 married in 1950 and lived as newlyweds in Hyde Park before moving to Skokie, where they would spend the rest of their lives, creating together a magnificent family. Joyce was a mother of 4, grandmother of 9, and great-grandmother of 6 of the luckiest children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in the world. She was, as you've heard, the matriarch of the family, and not just of the immediate family, but when her own mother passed away, she took on that role for the extended family as well. She reveled in this role. And Joyce was adored not only by her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but also by her many nieces and nephews who regularly called to check in. Jewish communal life was important to both Joyce and Art, so they joined Joyce's brother Jerry and sister-in-law Mitzi as founding members of Niles Township Jewish Congregation, which at the time was the only synagogue in Skokie. They spent decades at that congregation before following Janice and Modesto to Temple Beth Israel in the 90s. Joyce was active in the community with the NTJC Sisterhood, and when her children were at school with the PTA. And once the children grew a bit older, she joined Art and later Modesto working at the family store. As her children put it, Joyce led by example. She lived each stage of her life with generosity. She valued learning, and over all else, she valued her family. And so now we pray that Joyce's soul be bound up with the eternal and that she may rest in peace. I invite you all to please rise. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, im kedoshim utehorim, kezohar harakia mazhirim, et nishmat Masha Yenta bat Yitzchak Feivel v'Sarah shehalcha la'olama, Baal harachamim yastireha b'seter knafav la'olamim, vayitzror bitzror hachayim et nishmata, Adonai hu nachlata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava, v'nomar Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of Joyce Gartzman, our loved one who has gone into eternity, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure, whose light shines like the radiance of heaven, Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace. Together we say, Amen.
This concludes our service here in the chapel. Interment will take place immediately at the family's crypt at Memorial Park Cemetery in Skokie. Once again, on behalf of the family, I want to thank those who are joining us on the live stream. Please note the family has asked that memorial donations, contributions in Joyce's memory can be made to the charity of your choice. For those of us here in the chapel going in procession to the cemetery, please make sure that you obtain an orange funeral safety sticker. That sticker should be placed on the front passenger side of the windshield. We would also ask that you have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles throughout the procession. And as we drive in procession today, please drive as closely as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times, as we want to avoid any large spaces or gaps in the procession, particularly as we go through the intersections. Once we arrive at the mausoleum, we will have an opportunity for the grandchildren who will be serving as pallbearers both here in the chapel in a few moments and at the cemetery. After we place the casket on a set of rollers in the chapel, we're going to ask the family to remain just towards the front in the, there's a small chapel there. We'll gather and give the workers from the cemetery a few minutes, and then we'll invite you to the final entombment. As we mentioned, the grandchildren will be serving as pallbearers. At this time, I ask them to please step forward, and as we ask everybody to please rise as we escort the casket from the chapel along with the rabbi and the family. Please rise at this moment.